Alright guys, I am in Dixie National Forest right now. See the beautiful red rocks of the Claron Formation right in front of me. We're actually very close to Bryce Canyon National Park, which explains why the formation looks kind of like this out here. And let's see what cool stuff we can find. Alright, as I stand on this little point right here, also the first conifer I'll be talking about is the limber pine. This is a pretty interesting species, I think. I'd say about all of them, but I think this one in particular, because it grows at very high altitudes, like in the Wasatch, where you can also find it, and where I make most of my videos. It grows to up to 11,000 feet actually, so which is above the tree line for that locality. And it gets its name because you can bend its branches around like this. It's super flexible without hurting the tree too much. And again, it grows very high up. This is actually probably pretty low elevation for it, but it's an exposed, rocky, craggy area, which they also tend to like a lot, so it's not a surprise it's growing here. It's closer to the white bark pine, which you can find in more of the northern Rockies. This tree grows all throughout the west, but not far into Canada, while the white bark pine grows most in the northern Rockies and much further into Canada than this species does. It's quite useful for a few birds, especially the Clark's nutcracker, which I don't know if we get them too commonly in this part of Utah, but what they like to do is they like to hide its seeds all around in different places. They have like 10,000 different hiding spots, and remember, almost all of them are each winter. Jesus Christ, that's my camera lens cap. And each winter I'll find, again, remember, or almost all of them are, but the ones it doesn't remember will germinate new trees. So we have a bit of a mutualistic relationship like that. Now, some of you guys might be wondering why the vegetation is so sparse here. And you just look at this. There's almost no plants growing on this one hillside. I mean, this is a particularly bad one, but if you look out there, for instance, or all around here, it's not too different no matter where you go. And one of the big reasons for this has to do with the rocks themselves. Right now, as I said, we are on the Claron Formation, which is laid down all throughout the Eocene and was a large, shallow lake or wetland in central Utah, Lake Claron. Notable is that it was laid down in the lake variously as limestone or mudstone with a high concentration of calcareous sediment. And because of that, it's a fairly harsh substrate for many plants to live on. Calcium carbonate is quite tough for a lot of plants to adapt to. And it naturally does lead to a lot of adaptation and specialization. So a lot of species here we find are a bit specialized to this habitat, but they still have to deal with the very harsh exposed conditions. And one of the trees that does that best right here is this guy. I'm sure you're all waiting for him. This is Pinus longaeva, the Bristlecone Pine, or Great Basin Bristlecone Pine, I should say. Everyone loves this tree because of the fact that it can live longer than any other species of tree, at least ones that are non-clonal. Some species can reproduce from the roots and continue living as such for an even longer time, but this one forms the longest single non-clonal organism in the world, some of them living up to 4,000 years of age. This one probably a lot younger because it's in a much lower elevation where the conditions aren't quite as harsh. Remember, the extremely high altitudes that this plant can live at are what lead to it living a very, very long life. It has an extremely similar niche to the limber pine, in fact, one of which you can see right up there. In fact, they both live at very high altitudes, but where these two overlap, the Great Basin Bristlecone Pine will live even higher up in elevation. Sometimes going up to, like, say, 11,500 feet, which is insane for a tree species. But yeah, they look quite similar to each other, the Great Basin and Bristlecone and limber pine. But you can tell them apart because the Great Basin Bristlecone has these sort of bottle brush looking branches, as you can see here. Because the needles, they stay on the branches for a longer time. And those are the limber pine ones will fall off after a few years, while these ones will stay on for longer. And they're a little bit shorter. So naturally, it gives them this sort of bottle brush appearance. It's quite distinct. Like once you recognize it, you'll be able to tell this pine apart from it with such ease, you won't believe it. That's something about plant identification. You just have to really know this stuff sometimes, and once you do, it becomes really easy. Another good way to tell the two apart is that if you look at the branches on this one, even the very new and young ones have this sort of rough gray bark on them, while those of the limber pine have a smooth white bark. They don't develop a rough bark until the twigs get much older in age. The pine cones, I guess, also look a bit different, but I'm not sure how to tell them apart by those. One other important thing to know about the Great Basin Bristlecone Pine, because as it relates to me, is that you won't find it in the Wasatch Mountains. This is only found, it's found all throughout the Great Basin Mountains at high elevations, as well as the sort of southern Utah plateaus, which we are right now. I think this forest is part of the Paunsaugunt Plateau. same one Bryce Canyon's a part of. But you don't find it in the Wasatch at all. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just not right for the conditions. I don't know. There's also another plant here. This is Physaria species, most likely Physaria chambersii. I don't know too much about them, but the fact that they're part of the cabbage family, produce these weird little bloated, air-filled fruits, which gives them the name bladderpod commonly. I'm not sure you can find this species in the Wasatch, but I certainly haven't seen it there before. And now we're on to the valley floor, which leads to another reason of why the vegetation is so sparse up on the hills. And that's simply just because they're hills. That's sort of what they do. They're always a harder place to grow than nice flat terrain like this, especially when it's very steep slope. And you can imagine it's very hard for soil to get established on there and help grow proper species. Though admittedly the soil isn't too thick here either. It's pretty much the same substrate as we have up on the hills. This also leads to another species we can find, which is this guy, Potentilla fruticosa. One you can find in the Wasatch and pretty much everywhere else in the Rockies, an extremely common plant, also known as the Shrubby cinquefoil. I think it actually been moved to a different genus recently, so I'm not entirely sure if it's still Potentilla, but regardless, it's still commonly called this by almost everyone. Yeah, the genus Potentilla has almost I think over 500 members, so it's one of the largest genera in the plant kingdom, though that's not exactly saying much. There's many that have over 1,000 species, for instance. It's a member of the rose family. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about it. Most of them are herbaceous, but this one's a shrub, of course. Now, the most important low-growing shrub you'll find in this forest, or at least the most common, is this plant, which is Arctostaphylos patula, commonly known as the Greenleaf Manzanita. If you watch Crime Pays of Botany Dozens videos, at least his earlier work, you know that this is a genus that is mostly endemic to California in terms of its species diversity, though a few of them do wander outside, and this is perhaps one of the ones that wanders the farthest. It can be found all throughout southern Utah at middle elevations, sometimes on sand dunes, very often in forests like this, but again, you won't find the Wasatch at all. It's not one that gets that far north. Another species that's only found here but not in the Wasatch. I think there's also Arctostaphylos ursi. That one can be, I'm positive, can be found in the Wasatch as well as most of the other Rockies. In fact, I think it even wanders into parts of Russia, but it's the only species in that genus that we found outside of North America. What else we got? That's kind of cool. This is a good one. Oh, and this is perfect right here. Okay, so this rosette of leaves is Frasera speciosa. I'm not sure what the common name is, I don't really care. It's a member of the gentian family, which is one I don't know much about. But what is important to know is that this plant is monocarpic. So this year it's not going to flower. Monocarpic means it's basically any plant that only blooms once in its life and isn't just like an annual or biennial. So this plant will produce leaves every year to soak up energy from the sun, eventually soak you up enough so that it can then produce a nice big flower stalk like this. And when it does that, this is basically the end of the plant. It's not going to survive this. It uses up all its energy and it soon dies afterwards. So I'll get a close-up on the flowers. There you go, isn't that lovely? So yeah, this plant is gonna die this year because it flowers. Some of the little pups at its base, as we can see here, might survive a little bit longer, but I'm not really sure. Because they're attached to the root, and I don't think they're gonna flower ever. I think they're just gonna maybe survive for a few more years and then die themselves too. But yeah, very cool plant. This monocarpic growth is not super common in this part of the United States, so it's kind of cool to see. I think the only other major monocarpic genus, I mean most of the genus, or members of the genus Frasera aren't actually monocarpic. Most of just bloom like every year I think, but are perennial. I think the only other big monocarpic genus in the West is agave. All those species will only bloom once in their life. Again, they'll sometimes produce pups that will survive for a little bit longer, but not always, and those ones don't really ever bloom. God, look at this patch, just covered in that Frasera speciosa and Arctostaphylos patula, very young plants at that. Look at that huge limber pine right there. You never see them get this big. It's insane for any limber pine to get this tall. That's gotta be like over 60 feet. Hold on. Just want to get a better view of it for you. That's Purshia tridentata, by the way, another very important shrub. One you also find in the more low deserts, but also into these sort of forests at times. God, look at that. It might be impressing you guys, but I'm serious, it's insane to find a white bark pine, sorry, limber pine that gets that big. Like, unbelievable, actually. They're probably 60 feet tall, I think. And you obviously will never usually find them over 30 feet tall in their typical elevation range, much more higher up. But I guess the low elevation must be very kind to this tree right here. Having come from about that way, the forest is definitely starting to open up a little bit. Getting some more grasses. I think that's actually Basin Big Sagebrush in the background, so I want to go check that out. But yeah, of course, there's some more grasses here, and among them are this guy. Let's zoom in on it. It's a little bit sparse, but that's Hesperostipa comata, or needle and threadgrass. Probably my favorite grass you can find around here. As well as, well, shit, we got some Agropyron cristatum, which is definitely not my favorite grass around here. It's a rather unpleasant one, but oh well. Oh yeah, theirs isn't a good one, actually. Eriocoma hymeneoides, Indian rice grass. Both this grass and the needle and thread grass can be found in the Wasatch. Well, okay, not actually in the Wasatch, but in the Salt Lake Valley if it was, you know, still an intact habitat. It's just sort of native to the dry areas around here. We don't grow, oh shoot, is that cheatgrass? I think that is. Okay, I'm going to have to pull that out in a second, but before I do, both of those species, they seem to grow more in the mountains here because it's just drier. While in the Wasatch you get outcompeted because there's a lot more rainfall, I guess. Okay, I gotta do a little ecological rescue here. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I just had to take care of the cheatgrass. Nothing will ruin my day more than seeing some cheatgrass, especially in a lovely, pristine environment. But then again, nothing will cheer me up more than seeing a lovely stand of Basin Big Sagebrush. Again, disregard the invasives, the Crested Wheatgrass, which was like the other spot I showed you, with Basin Big Sagebrush growing everywhere. We saw a lovely mature stand of these trees. These ones are even taller, I think. That one I think might almost be 9 feet tall. Like, let me check. Oh geez, did that scratch my lens? Regardless, okay, my hand goes up right to that branch. So if you take a step back, try to see how tall this tree is. Keep your eyesight on that. This is going to be a good over 8 feet tall, maybe not 9, but still very, very tall for sagebrush. This one, oh my god, sorry about the washed outness, but that one might be 9 feet tall. These are practically little trees at this point. I mean, you know, sagebrush are kept track of on the databases for champion trees because some get really tall. I think the tallest is 15, maybe even 20 feet tall. I gotta look it up. It's growing somewhere in Oregon. Wow. I love Basin Big. Oh boy, that might be the king of the forest there. This is so cool. Wow. Holy crap. Yeah, this one could be 10 feet tall, maybe. Okay. My hand goes right up to about there. My head does. So we take a step back slowly into the ditch. Can't remember where my hand was, but that definitely looks like it could be up to 10 feet tall. Probably close, probably a little under actually, but still. What an amazing backdrop we have right here. God, I just love this stuff. It's got some Ericomeria nauseosa. I couldn't remember it for a second. That's a rubber rabbit brush. It's gonna get pretty big too. Maybe not quite as big as Basin Big, but it's a very fast grower unlike Basin Big. Oh well. Alright, I probably gotta head back now, but I'll try and hit a few plants on the way back up the wash. So let's carry on. You can really see the similarities between here and Bryce Canyon in terms of rock formations. Not the best view, but you get what I'm saying. Nowhere near as grand, but it's a lot of the same stuff. Okay, heading back up now, we can see a very common type of erosion. Where just washes can sometimes cut very deep, creating what's known as arroyo. Many people out here. I mean, this wash could be, despite the fact that it's like 6 feet deep, could be only a few years old, if even that. Exposing the roots of that giant ponderosa pine. Well, I guess it's not giant, but you know what I'm saying. Big tree, roots are exposed. As we head up further, we'll see much more of that. Man, it's even exposed down to bare rock in some places. Wow. All right. Some more roots. A lot of plants are actually growing in here. I mean, we got Hymenopapus filiformis, or filifolius, I'm not sure which it is. Asteraceae member. I'm not much to tell you about it. It looks kind of like a Connectus douglasii, but they're not even super closely related. I mean, they're closely related, but like not as much as one would think based on how similar they are. The Hymenopapus, I think, just have to look for the, see, that's yellow, while Connectus douglasii is normally white in terms of flower. And that species is also, but basically has less leaves growing on the stem, more basal, while Connectus has more on the stem, less basal. All right, here you can see sort of a start of this arroyo erosion. Recently some sand is cleaved off from the main face like a, straight up like a glacier calving off. Look at that. That may have been attached only like a few weeks ago, whenever the last heavy rain was. Maybe it fell off after the rain, but regardless, it was probably back to there at least, just earlier this year, before the snow melt season. Let's carry on. All right, with the little light that I have left, I guess I'm talking about this species. This is Physaria Englemannii, commonly known as Englemann Spruce. This is a classic tree of a high altitude in Utah and really most of the Rockies in general. This is actually probably in the bottom of the elevation range you'll typically find it in. Normally you find it sort of going to 8,000 to 10,000 feet. So it's definitely a tree line species. And yeah, like all spruce, it's got prickly needles. Oh, so prickly. You know, this might possibly be blue spruce. I don't think it is because it doesn't look blue for one. And really, Englemann spruce is just a guess that makes the most sense. Yeah, this is the species normally grows up to the tree line, and though not above limber pine and Great Basin Bristlecone Pine. Well, you got to remember, those ones technically grow above the tree line, at least very often. It's because you find a tree growing somewhere doesn't mean you are below the tree line at that altitude. And also, it's got scaly, platy bark you can peel back. All right, let's move on. All right, guys, I'm going to try and wrap up this video by as quickly as possible going through a bunch of species right now. First off, we have this guy. I don't know this, to be honest. It's got yellow flowers with 5 petals and these long snake-like branches. I mean, almost viney looking. Well, it's definitely not a vine, of course, but it's got long, slender stems, what I mean to say. You know, it could be a species of linum, actually. I'll have to keep that open. I will try and identify it for you. Then we have over here this flowering plant. 6 petals, so it's clearly liliaceous. I don't exactly know what it is, but I can tell you it definitely looks like a whole group of plants known as death camas, so whatever it is, don't eat it. Am I filming somewhere I filmed before? Oh, I guess that's the same Frasera speciosa I just filmed earlier. Oh well. What else we got? Oh shoot. It's like a species of phlox. Most likely, it could be Phlox hidei, or it could be really, really diminutive Lonanthus pungens, or it could be something else entirely. I'm not confident to say either. But regardless, most members of the genus Phlox, though Phlox longiflora, which is the one you see most often, is not a cushion plant. And most of the members of this genus are cushion plants. It's kind of like this. So don't let this fool you ever. Speaking of which, this is probably Phlox ostromontana. Not exactly cushion growing, very prickly to the touch typically. Looks sort of like this. Yeah, Phlox and Lonanthus are both members of the genus Polemoniaceae. Sorry, family Polemoniaceae. Whew, this quick speaking is not doing me any favors. What else we got? Not a whole lot else. I guess a thistle that's might be nice to wrap up the day with. It's likely Cirsium wheelerii. Couldn't tell you though. These thistles are very hard to identify. Well, I hope you learned something about this place and you can maybe appreciate it a bit better. I mean, it's pretty beautiful, so it's hard not to appreciate it, but maybe you can appreciate it in a whole nother light. If you've been here before and wonder what some plants were, hopefully it taught you a little bit about this place regardless. Thanks for watching and see you next time.